afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the October Cabinet meeting. So we'll get straight into the agenda. Do we have any apologies? No apologies. Declarations of interest, anybody? Gail?
Thank you. On pages 12 and 24, there's a reference to general fund capital projects and changes places toilet at the Forum. I'm on the board of the Forum Trust.
Okay, thank you. We'll take that as a non-pecuniary interest. Thank you very much. Any more? No other declarations of interest? Do we, Alex, have any public questions or petitions?
We don't.
We don't. It looks really quiet this evening. Right, okay. And then we'll go on to the minutes. Are the minutes a true record? Can we indicate that we agree that's the case? Thanks very much. So now we'll go on to item 5, which is the 22-23 Corporate Performance Assurance Report. As per usual, I will pick up the policy side of this, performance side, and Councillor Kendrick will pick up the finance aspects of it. And as people may remember, this was one of the reports that should have come last month, but was deferred to this meeting because of the death of Queen Elizabeth II and the funeral protocols around that. Right, okay, so this is the first quarter performance assurance report of our new corporate plan. The first 2 pages outline the structure and the framework for that, and turning to page 10 of the report, page 2 of the document, it discusses the 5 corporate aims under that new corporate plan 22 to 26. I have to say, its description of people living well in a diverse and safe city, a sustainable and healthy city, infrastructure and housing needs being met, an inclusive economy with equal opportunity for all residents to flourish, and that the City Council is in good shape to serve the needs of the city, looks like, in the contrast to national political narratives, like an extremely radical manifesto, but actually it's what every level of governance should be responsible for delivering for the people of this country. So the document, which you'll find on page 13, is I have to say, a very clearly written document. It's clear about our successes, about performance in a number of areas, but it also highlights areas for improvement and gives explanations. And so for our viewers who are watching us this evening, this cabinet paper is online. This document will be online, and it's a good read, and it's very clearly written, and I thank the officers for the work that has gone into this report. So the executive summary and development and city services, I think what I would highlight as a thread which runs through the whole of this document, the 3 directorates, is the impact of the cost of living crisis. And that manifests itself in a number of areas, and I shall briefly allude to some of those. Still on page 15, community services, I'm very pleased to say percentage of people feeling safe in local areas survey is good. Customer contact through digital channels is also moving in a very positive direction, and also improvements in terms of the number of households living in temporary accommodation. Business rates collection for corporate and commercial services is good, and the efficiency in terms of dealing with housing benefit claims as well, and also in terms of the keeping within the general fund budget framework is on target, and some very good performance in planning decisions and food premises hygiene compliance in developing and city services. So those tell a good story. If we move on past some of the finance pages which Councillor Kendrick will be speaking to, there are some areas where we also need to see performance improve around community services. That includes the backlog of void works. Multidisciplinary team has been established to work to improve the re-let process end to end, and that's particularly important to make sure that backlog is cleared. Rent collection, excluding arrears brought forward. There are some issues around this. Cost of living factor, but also changes to universal credit. Universal credit has a number of weaknesses compared to the legacy benefits that people are moved from. And these, of course, universal credit is a large number of people in the city who are in work and on universal credit. And universal credit really should be designed to improve their financial services, their sustainable financial situation. It does not always do that, and we have regular meetings with the Department of Work and Pensions to raise these issues and get an update on the latest regulations. There are some issues around FOI response times within statutory timescales. Again, in some of these areas we're looking to set a strong baseline to identify performance trends, and also around areas like corporate complaints. There's a new policy in that area that will go live alongside an updated process. So in terms of, I've already said, community services, there's outperformance in areas such as homelessness, prevention, IT systems, and customer contact through digital channels. Success areas, the biodiversity strategy, this is now on page 18, subject to extensive consultation, vital area of activity for the city, but as people may have heard on the radio this morning, the government's own targets for significantly improving biodiversity are not being met, and there's very poor performance at a national level, so we have to do everything we can in Norwich to play our part in improving that. The NEC system upgraded and provides a new functionality and is working very effectively. Safer Streets Fund, £200,000 secured from government. Councillors and is very successful in making applications, funding applications, again very much in the partnership with a number of other key organisations in the city, in this case Norwich BID, so that means some new safety measures across the city and neighbourhoods, including increased lighting, CCTV and safety technology. And income collection rates, again this theme about the cost of living crisis have reduced, but the work that we do through the Financial Inclusion Consortium designed to help people mitigate some of those cost of living impacts, and it's put significant pressure, and the report says this, on people in Norwich, particularly those on lower incomes. That is something that as an organisation we are working across the organisation to make sure that we enable people to tackle some of those problems. and ensure that they get the support they need from the council and our other partner providers. Corporate and commercial services. There are a number of issues in relation to the fact that businesses are finding things difficult as well, but the success of the council tax rebate scheme, which is on page 30 of the report, page 22 of the document, it gives a very clear indication of how effective our teams are in getting rebates to people. So far, that's £6.9 million worth, and some discretionary funding out to people to help particularly hard-pressed households, particularly those who are not eligible for the council tax rebate. So really good work there, and we mean our thanks for all of that. Among the challenges, discretionary housing payment scheme on page 31. The pressure on that particular pot of money is affected by the number of people who are migrating to universal credit. So there's a combination of benefit related issues, but also the broader cost of living crisis. And we are foursquare behind the idea that the benefits uprate, and let's remember this is for people who are in work, who have got caring responsibilities, who have got illness or disability, that these should go up by the full rate of the current rate of inflation. And we have made that case to government and to the Secretary of State of the DWP, Chloe Smith. There's a section on council culture. I mean, clearly we are an organisation that needs to keep up with changing circumstances, changing trends, and that's to have an agile, flexible workforce able to respond to the needs of the citizens and be that effective organisation that we need to be. We draw on data that we've generated to a culture survey sent to all employees to get a sense of their perspectives and to use that to shape the relevant strategies to enable new ways of working and new ways of thinking. This is a big piece of work which has been ongoing and is making significant progress. But it's something that we collectively need to do together and are doing together as an organisation. The last area, development city services. The investment property portfolio has dropped from green to amber, but continues to be above what we describe as the intervention target. This has been a very important strategy to make sure that we've got a source of income as a compensation for the fact that we've essentially lost virtually all our revenue support grants since 2010. And again, there's a lot of advice being provided to businesses to enable them to manage the really difficult financial circumstances that they are in, to enable these businesses to survive through this difficult time. Food safety team, very high performance, and also got some national television coverage in April 2022 to highlight the importance of this area of work. Very successful partnership working with the Royal Housing Association, and bringing on stream more housing with genuinely affordable rents. significant work. This is work in Gail's portfolio area, East Norwich Master Plan, that's in Mike Stannard's portfolio. Some really significant work moving what we hope will be ultimately a new community for Norwich that provides good quality homes, houses, jobs and facilities that will add to the city, which of course is one of the fastest growing in the country. So the master planning work is well underway. Complaints and FIOs, I've referred to this already, but you know, there's a good explanation around these are frontline services you are likely to get with using enforcement powers, FOIs and complaints and a dialogue that needs to be addressed. Ideally not through FOIs, but engaging with those residents, those businesses. But it is designed to deal with licensing applications, planning permissions, and various enforcements around things like fly tipping or environmental crimes. So, one other success story I'd like to refer to is St Peter's House. It's in the portfolio of Councillor Beth Jones. St Peter's House, quite a very good example. I won't go into this in great detail because the story is well known. A very good example of intervention by the council, but also working with other agencies like the Building Control, Norfolk Fire Service and Rescue Service to make these residences safe. They were a significant hazard to life and frankly of very poor quality. Shades of Grenville come to mind, I have to say, and fortunately the interventions by the council and other agencies made sure that that didn't come to pass and that these are now being made secure for those residents. So once again, it's just a reminder when we do this report of the multifunctional role that the council has in delivering a range of really important services, directly working in partnership to deliver on key objectives like ensuring that people's financial security is secured as best it can be, and of course building the much needed services like housing, in terms of housing delivery around affordable, of good quality, affordable homes. So is a kind of a very effective, this report, very effective sort of snapshot of what the council is doing, and on a quarterly basis these reports come forward for consideration in Cabinet and available to the public, and I think, as I said, it's very well worth having a look at this document. I'm going to ask Councillor Hendrick just to pick up some of the financial aspects of the report.
Thank you very much, Chair. This report shows the Council's forecast financial outturn position for the financial year 22-23 as of the 30th of June of this year. If I may first turn to the General Fund. The forecast General Fund revenue outturn from budget managers at Q1 shows a £626,000 underspend. However, the 22-23 pay award is still being negotiated, and the Q1 report has been adjusted to include an additional £728,000 to reflect the impact of this. An estimated £50,000 of the additional pressure is expected to be met by the housing revenue account through the recharge process, leaving a net pressure of £676,000, which will result in a small overspend overall for the General Fund. There is a significant increase in the level of interest generated by the Council's day-to-day cash investments due to the increasing level of interest rates and relatively high cash balances, as capital expenditure has slipped and the externalisation of some debt took place last year when interest rates were lower. The corporate contingency of £400,000 has been assumed to be fully spent given the pressures and uncertainties faced by resourcing any pay award. Now to turn to the housing and revenue account. The forecast of revenue outturn the budget from budget managers to the housing revenue account shows a £714,000 underspend. The quarter one report reflects the impact of the 22-23 pay award for an additional £232,000 to the HRA, including an estimated recharge of £50,000 from the general fund, or the general fund I should say. The housing revenue account underspend is largely as a result of the housing revenues account's share of the increased levels of investment income being generated. However, given the issues associated with the cost of living crisis, it is important that levels of rent and service charge arrears are kept under close review. Now to turn to capital. During the quarter, a number of underspends, a 21-22 capital budget totalling £16.672 million, are proposed to be carried forward for use in the financial year 22-23. A number of capital budget requirements totalling £371,000 have been proposed, along with the deletion of £172,000 from the 22-23 capital programme, which has been proposed for the full council improvement. 3 additions to the capital programme have also been proposed for approval by the Cabinet. They are supported by the new external funding, with totalling £66,000. Budget manager's prediction for the capital outturn position, taking into account the proposed changes to the capital programme and the progress of the schemes, will be considered further by the Resources, Performance and Delivery Board and will be shortly reported in the quarter 2 assurance reports. A risk. The corporate risk register has been reviewed and updated, and the audit committee considered in more detail the individual risks at their meeting last week, which I attended. A new risk on nutrient neutrality has been given the significant impact this is having on determining planning applications. It's not a surprise given the national uncertainty around inflation, interest rates and public sector finances that the risks surrounding the medium-term financial planning are increasing. That, of course, is a British understatement. A number of risks are still showing as red, therefore of concern, but I am encouraged by the mitigation actions that our officers are taking to understand and reduce our exposure whenever possible to those risks. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks very much, Paul. Cabinet members, any comments you would like to make on any aspects of the corporate performance report? Gail?
I'd just like to, at this stage, to thank you for going through the report so thoroughly. You've highlighted some of our concerns, you've highlighted some of the really good stuff that is happening. So at this stage, I don't really want to add any more, but you did a very comprehensive job. Thank you.
Which sometimes is gone on too long. but no, I felt I was being comprehensive. Anyway, I'm sure, Lucy, out of all of that, you probably have at least a question you'd like to ask.
I've got several questions, but I'll ask one.
Thank you.
Thank you for a really clear and transparent report. Thank you for talking about it too. And I agree with you. I'd like to ask a question on an area that you highlighted, and I agree the council provides a really important service. That's housing delivery. And I think we can improve on this. It's the average relet time in days of council homes, excluding major works, which stands at 35 days, according to the report. And that indicator has been read throughout 21-22 year due to challenges during the final year of the repairs and maintenance contract, as it says in the report, which led to a backlog of void works. So there is an improvement that's shown on page 18, and that's very welcome. But it's still worryingly high, 35 days to turn around a house. At the present time, 238 council properties are empty. And as an example, we have had reports of long-term empty houses, particularly that the council has bought back. Residents like on Clarkson Road in Wensum have told us of a property that's been empty for over a year. And that property management issue also has other knock-on effects. For example, people are able to bid on properties that need refurbishing, They're being told they're ready soon, but in fact they're not, so they come off the list and they're essentially homeless and waiting. So given that thousands of people are waiting for housing at any one time, and commercial operators can turn voids round in a much shorter amount of time, do you share my concern at that figure of 35 days, and when can we expect that to be cleared up?
I do share that concern, but I'll pass over to Gail. You wanted to make some points?
Then I'm sure Lou might want to come in as well. That we do share your concern, and that's why the multidisciplinary project team has been put in place, and they are making progress now. We are have got more than one contractor working on this, and they are aware that we need these houses or homes turned around quickly. They've got to be of a good standard at the same time. It is a challenge. It's a challenge when sometimes you've got different trades having to go in one after the other. You can't, if they're not trained to do all the jobs, they can't do all the jobs. So I'm really concerned. We are making progress, and we are very much focused on it at the moment. So I'll let Lou put a bit more to it if she wants to.
Yeah, Lou, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Galvin. Yes, I mean, you know, we've been really transparent about the position we find ourselves in relation to repairs and maintenance services. We were transparent about the fact that when we were bringing the services back, you know, we were going to continue to face those challenges for some time. We brought a report to Cabinet earlier this year in about February, March time, which gave members really clear information about the backlog, the extent of that backlog, and what we were going to do to resolve it. And that is working. Progress is being made well against that backlog, and we anticipate that those works will be completed, you know, into the new year. We're well on our planned targets to completion. We, like you know, accept that the position of the voids is not where we want it to be. Those voids that you're talking about are caught in that backlog. Progress is being made. We had a position where, unfortunately, some offers were made at a time when those properties were in that old contract position. And so what's happened is we've stopped that from happening now. So we're not, you know, that position won't arise again with new offers. But unfortunately, we have a position where we have a small number of households who are caught in that position. We're staying in touch with those people, we're keeping them up to date, and we're doing all we can to prioritise those particular voids.
Yeah, top priority of the council. Okay, let's go back to page 9 of the report, where we've got 6 recommendations. Can we endorse these recommendations, please? Please indicate. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on then to item 6, which is on page 45, which is the Treasury Management Review 21 to 22. Paul, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Obviously, I'm sure you all very much look forward to the Treasury Management paper, but of course this is becoming of even greater importance due to the present financial situation and the higher levels of interest rates. This report provides details of the outturn position of Treasury activities for the financial year which ended on the 31st of March 22, and highlights compliance with the Council's policies which has previously been approved by the Council. The report asks Cabinet to note the report and the Treasury activity for the year up to the 31st of March 22 and recommend it for approval by the Council. As always, the priorities for the management of the Council's day-to-day cash balances is to safeguard its security, ensure that liquidity is maintained, and then to achieve the best yield. The Treasury Management Code of Practice and approval indicators place responsibility on members to review and scrutinise Treasury management policy and activities. The report sets out a range of indicators and highlights that there are no breaches to alert you to. The Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy have introduced a new indicator called the liability benchmark. Their guidance requires the Council to include and report against new indicators as from the 1st of April 23. As part of the preparations to implement the new indicator, officers have been prepared a draft indicator which is presented at paragraph 22 in this report. The purpose of the liability benchmark is to indicate borrowing requirement and identify key exposure to interest rates, liquidity, the cost of carrying and refinancing a risk. During the financial year 21-22, as the United States economy started to emerge from the global COVID pandemic, interest rates had remained at a historically low level. Treasury activity during that year enabled the Council to borrow from the Public Works Loan Board and take advantage of low interest rates available at the time. Given that interest rates have since arisen significantly in response to inflationary pressures, this borrowing has been a success in managing the Council's long-term debt position at a lower cost. And may I take this opportunity to congratulate and thank our officers who took on very, very sensible and prudent decisions. The Council remains significantly in turn borrowed. However, cash balances available for investment will continue to enable the Council to maximise its returns in a rising interest rate environment. Following a review of the Treasury Management Strategy document and the counterpart credit ratings criteria, an amendment has been made to the wording to remove any possible ambiguity. This minor wording change has been agreed with the linked asset services, who are the Council's Treasury advisors, and have been approved by the Executive Director for Corporate and Commercial Services in accordance with her delegated powers. Since the reports are prepared, the financial markets have faced significant volatility as the government grapples with rising inflation and interest rates, low economic growth and potential recession. The UK financial markets have been negatively impacted by the recent fiscal policy announcements, resulting in sterling losses against other major currencies, and therefore the potential for likely higher interest rates. Again, that's a bit of an understatement. The Council's Treasury Management activity continues to be monitored against a wider backdrop in accordance with Link Asset Services and the Council's Treasury Management Strategy. I'm personally pleased that this report illustrates the positive management of our cash balances and would endorse the recommendations to propose it by the full Council. And again, may I thank our officers very much for the good work that they have done and ensuring that we continue to maintain sound finances for this local authority.
Thank you very much, and thank you for framing that in the macroeconomic environment. Any questions, comments from Cabinet members? No? Lucy, anything on Treasury Management?
Yes, please. Just considering it was a postponed item, point 44 speaks about the Prudential and Treasury Management Codes. Councillors are now required to review assets held for investment purposes against ongoing borrowing requirements, and requires councils to consider disposal of investments to finance borrowing where the sale of an investment is financially viable. The Council is currently undertaking a review of its investment portfolio to determine assets, returns and the potential cost of disposal. Just like to understand what that means and whether it may mean that we are required to sell off commercial investments even if they make a considerable financial return, and how far we are on with reviewing assets in line with that code, and can you update us on any impacts?
Okay, that's a comprehensive question. So there is a major asset review of all of our assets. That work is ongoing. I mean, clearly what we want to be able to do is have an asset base which generates income and economic activity for the city, and to dispose of assets which are a liability to us. So, for example, the joint sale of the airport industrial estate is an example where we get a significant capital receipt that we could therefore invest in capital assets rather than drawing on revenue budgets to support capital programmes, and also on the basis that the sale of that asset would result in significant investment from the private sector purchasers to improve that facility and generate more jobs and better businesses and so on. I do not think that there are assets that we would have to dispose of which generate a good income for us under some government criteria. I don't think that's the case. Those assets are still very much an integral part of our ability to both stabilise our budget and generate income for loss of government funding. And of course we're expecting another probably less than positive response from government when they're looking at closing this significant budget gap that they managed to open up themselves. But over to you, Annabelle, after listening to my layperson's observations.
No, thank you, Leader, for that. Thank you for the question. I think it's important to acknowledge that there are lots of issues around as to how do we approach this. Fundamentally, we shouldn't be in a situation where we have a commercial property that's within our existing portfolio that is providing a good return, that we would be forced to sell it. But fundamentally, we have to give consideration to all of that portfolio if we're looking to do external borrowing for new capital investment. That we've been asked to look at that as part of our consideration as to how we would fund that. But the decision would remain with us. There are criteria around what we can now borrow for moving forward, but we look at all of that as part of how we fund our capital programme once we've established the need. So we'll give all of those considerations. We're obviously going to be doing far more training with the specific members that are going to be on the Treasury Management Committee moving forwards, and we'll take this debate further through that process there.
Yeah. And that's a welcome initiative actually to set up that panel. Because Treasury Management, first of all, we're very successful as a council in Treasury Management work, and that goes back, in my recollection, a long way, but it is a significant area of activity for us, and it's good that we're engaging members more closely in that. I mean, Paul is the holder of the holy grail of knowledge on this, but we're going to share it out a bit more in the panel. Okay. Can we go to the recommendations on this report, which is to note the activity for the period referenced? That's on page 45. All those in favour? Thank you. Now, before we go any further, I overlooked to do one thing on the previous report, because the recommendations are not valid until we make a decision about whether we need to go below the line to look at the corporate performance assurance report exempt appendices. Does anybody want to go below the line to do that? Could you please indicate that you don't want to go below the line? Yes, okay. And so do we need to vote the recommendations again?
No, I think given it's been fairly evident that members are happy not to go below the line to discuss, and you've taken a previous decision that's unaffected, you're fine to move on.
Good, thank you very much. Right, let's go on to the next report, page 61, which is our regular report on the update on health, safety and compliance in council homes and buildings. Gail, over to you.
Thank you. So, as the report says, this report is an update to members about health, safety and compliance management and improvement in council homes and buildings. This report should have been presented at the Cabinet meeting on the 14th of September. However, as this meeting fell within the mourning period for the death of Queen Elizabeth II, this paper was moved to today's Cabinet meeting. The paper is unchanged, and of course things will have moved on since the paper was written, incorporating data from August. Norwich City Council is a large social housing landlord of approximately 14,500 council homes, owns the freehold for the buildings in which approximately 3,000 leaseholders' homes are situated, and owns more than 900 assets held within the general fund. After self-reporting ourselves last year, the regulator of social housing found that we had reached the home standard, but importantly, did not feel it necessary to take any enforcement action against the council, because they have confidence in our plans to improve services and return to full compliance. The steps being taken and the significant progress being made are set out in this quarterly report to Cabinet. I'm sure that you have no wish for me to go through the report line by line, but there are a few points which I wish to highlight. The government's arrangements have been strengthened since June with the establishment of the Compliance Delivery Group under points 7 and 8 in this report. The Council has entered into a voluntary undertaking with the Regulator of Social Housing, which confirms the steps that will be taken by Norwich City Council to achieve full compliance. As part of the voluntary undertaking, the Compliance Delivery Group has been established, which includes 3 independent experts from outside the Council. They are most certainly experts in their field. This group advises the Compliance Board in delivering the Compliance Improvement Plan. At this point, I should point out that the Regulator of Social Housing is satisfied with the progress that is being made and the arrangements that are in place with regular monthly meetings taking place. Good progress has been made in achieving the actions incorporated in the Compliance Improvement Plan during the last 3 months. This is a live document covering both housing and non-housing assets, which is updated with information as it is clarified and with the progress being made to complete tasks. The update of the priority actions in the Compliance Improvement Plan is provided in paragraphs 13 on pages 63 and 64 of the papers and shows the considerable progress made since November 2021. Moving on to the compliance dashboard, one can see that overall good progress has been made in the last quarter, with overdue inspections and remedial works reducing in all areas. You will note that contractors are still sometimes experiencing access issues, but our experienced housing team are helping with individual cases. Rapid progress has been made in reducing the outstanding water hygiene inspections, with only a small number of inspections in domestic properties outstanding at the time of the report. That's on page 66. Any remedial actions are being completed at the time of inspection. Then on pages 67 and 68 we have the section on asbestos. We now have much improved data, the survey work ongoing and now all programmed in. This progress is to be commended. With our non-housing assets information and data is being collated and a compliance dashboard being developed. The Compliance Board has developed a risk register and a summary from the register is provided in Appendix 1 on page 73. It is of course always of concern that we have the capacity and expertise to address all of the issues within this paper, and that is monitored and addressed by the Compliance Board. The next steps can be found in full on page 69 with training, working across departments, procedures and capacity, just some of the topics covered. We will of course continue to engage with our tenants and leaseholders and indeed with our tenant involvement panel. An update of the financial implications is given on pages 70 and 71. I hope that this brief summary has been useful. You will note that the contact officer on the report is Vivian Nibbs. If the report had been able to be presented in September, Vivian would have been in attendance at the meeting, but her contract with the council recently came to an end. I would like to take this opportunity to have our thanks minuted. Vivian's diligence and expertise in helping us onwards with this journey is much appreciated. So over to officers if they would like to add anything.
Okay, any further points? We'll pick up questions and we'll respond at that point. Any comments from Cabinet members? Lucy?
Thank you very much, and thank you for the report, and thanks to Vivian. So it was 14th of October a year ago that we were notified of this problem, so that's a year and 5 days. It's almost exactly 1 year since the council revealed the extent of the safety time bomb it was sitting on, with a full range of safety checks from fire, asbestos gas and others which hadn't been carried out, and it was transparent about that in some cases for many years, and appreciate how the priority was to put them right. Costs were estimated to be over £2 million to put that right, and we were assured the work would take place quickly. However, it is a year on, and we can see a revenue underspend of 0.84 million and the capital of 1 million in the report. And my understanding is that underspend is non-delivery. I appreciate that the report says the reserves will be used in the future and that there has been some non-receipt of invoices, but we're not where we wanted to be, I don't think. I need to ask for assurance that we'll not be sitting here in another year's time looking at another underspend like that, and looking back on the risk register on page 14, which was in the first item, one quite rightly is health and safety and compliance in council homes, which still has a risk score of well over double where it needs to be. So I'd just like to ask, why hasn't this significantly improved when last time this came to Cabinet we were reassured that by now we would see an improvement and the risk reducing?
Okay, well, let's pick up those points. Underspends are also sometimes underspends as a result of efficient use of money, or the cost of something is less than was anticipated, but we'll see what the answer is. Lou.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question, Councillor Galvin. If I could just take us back a bit, we reported to Cabinet in November last year. We made a commitment at that time around timescales. We said that we were aiming to return to, or to deal with the historic issues that we'd identified within about a 12-month period. So that 12-month period is almost upon us, and we will be reporting, of course, to Cabinet again in December, which will give you that full 12-month update. I think from the report you can see we've made good progress. Things have really moved forward. We do in this report, which of course is slightly out of date now, we do report some underspends. I think that really that's about lag. It's about a lag in kind of contract amounts coming through and those invoices being paid. So we may well complete the programme under budget, but we're aiming to complete the programme and we're moving quite quickly towards doing that. What we're doing now, as Councillor Harris explained, is we have additional governance mechanisms in place. We are getting to a place where those historic issues have almost been dealt with, and we're now embedding the business as usual process so that we ensure that we don't find ourselves in a position again where we're dealing with an historic backlog. I hope that's helpful.
Thanks very much, Gail.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say once again that we have, or I don't have, but Lou has regular meetings with the regulator of social housing, and they are satisfied with the progress that is being made, and they are, of course, the experts in this field.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, so we're asked to note the content of the report. Could we do that, please? Please indicate. Thank you very much. Right, let's then move on to our final report this evening, which is the Sustainable Warmth Strategy 22 to 25 with Action Plan, and that's in the name of Councillor Hampton. Emma, over to you.
Thank you. I'm really pleased today to be bringing forward this Sustainable Warmth Strategy and Sustainable Warmth Action Plan for 2022 to 25. This was formerly called the Affordable Warmth Strategy, but hopefully that slight tweak in title better reflects our commitment to tackling fuel poverty and associated inequalities in a sustainable manner, and it reflects the fact that lots of the measures we take, like improving the energy efficiency of homes, also leads to a reduction in carbon emissions. Fuel poverty occurs when a household can't afford to keep a home adequately warm at a cost that is reasonable and affordable. The government's definition states that the household must both have an income below the poverty line and must have a home that has an energy efficiency rating below band C. But as discussed from page 89 onwards, more and more people in practice are finding themselves in fuel poverty. They don't strictly fit into both of these categories. So that means they won't then receive qualifying benefits. Fuel poverty can have a detrimental impact on people's health and well-being, increasing the risk of strokes and heart attacks, reducing people's mobility and exacerbating existing conditions. So it's important it's tackled in all of its forms. One of the most important sentences in this strategy, which I want to highlight early on, is our new Sustainable Warmth Policy Commitment, which is on page 93. This says, quote, that we will aim to ultimately eradicate fuel poverty in Norwich within the timescale of the 2040 city vision, and in the immediate term support vulnerable groups to manage and reduce the impacts of fuel poverty. It's an ambitious but hopefully achievable goal, and that timescale's been picked because there's several synergies between eradicating fuel poverty and other ambitions set out in the 2040 city vision, like moving to a net zero city by 2045 and shifting to clean energy by 2040. Lots of the measures we'll take will hopefully hit each of those goals simultaneously. Combating fuel poverty in a just and sustainable manner has always been a priority for this council, but the unprecedented cost of living and energy crises we find ourselves in has put this even further up the agenda. We've got a strong and proud track record of taking action to lift people out of fuel poverty, and much of this work is summarised right at the start of the strategy in my opening remarks, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of examples here as well. Our ongoing energy efficiency and retrofit programme has seen 1,800 properties improved in the past 5 years. We've successfully bid for millions of pounds of funding from the government, including from the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund and Affordable Warmth Grant. And we've also enabled installation of energy-saving measures in private sector homes through our Cosy City scheme, plus some small-scale improvements through our Winter Wellbeing programme. The average SAP rating of our council stock is over 70, which is better than the average for private households in Norwich and better than the national average. We launched Raw Power, our own white label energy supplier, which has provided affordable access to clean energy tariffs. And we've got our collective switching scheme, which now only offers 100% renewable options and has helped more than 9,000 people switch to a reduced cost energy supply. And we've established relationships with external partners to offer year-round advice on household budget and energy debt, as well as for 7 years hosting our Winter Wellbeing Conference to coordinate local schemes and provide training. These are all great achievements, but there's more work to do. The strategy and action plan before us outlines the approach for how we continue and build on this work in order to meet that new policy commitment and address the growing challenges of the cost of living crisis. Its strategic objectives fall broadly into 2 categories. Firstly, providing support to vulnerable groups, and secondly, ensuring support is targeted according to risk. Targeting to reach those most in need will be achieved by looking at factors which make people vulnerable, alongside data relating to areas of high fuel poverty, wider deprivation and poor housing. This strategy seeks to find both long-term and short-term solutions towards these objectives and our policy commitment, and especially with regards to those longer-term solutions, there are lots of links and dependencies with other council strategies and plans, and that's outlined on page 99. To eradicate fuel poverty, 2 of the most important solutions are going to be improving household income by having thriving communities and thriving local economies, and to improve the energy efficiency of housing. These are both core components of the 2040 city vision, and they come into various council strategies relating to inequality, as well as our environmental strategy and new environmental action plan, which establishes the principles for a citywide energy efficiency and net zero retrofit plan. And of course, we're operating this strategy against a national backdrop of government policies, strategies, plans and decisions, which are stated and briefly explained in the appendix to the strategy. Although what the government is always going to do feels more up in the air at the moment than ever, and there are some plans and bits of work listed here. They've failed to do so far, and it's questionable if they'll ever kind of live up to the expectations. It does give us a feel for what could be coming at us from the top. But of course, we've been clear in this chamber many times before, especially in the form of full council, how the government needs to go further and faster to tackle both the cost of living crisis and the climate crises and energy crises that we're all experiencing. As a council, we've shown our support, among other things, for measures like a windfall tax on gas and oil giants to make them pay instead of people, for measures to bring energy bills down, and for proper national funding in a retrofitting programme. And of course, we always have to pair this with a call for proper investment in local authorities, because we know our communities best, and we're best placed to implement many of the measures outlined in the strategy in an effective and targeted way. But we've clearly still got a mountain to climb when it comes to getting the national change we desperately need. Having terrified the markets and crashed the economy, the government looks like they're going to impose yet more rounds of austerity measures, including rolling back on the already insufficient support to help people with energy bills. But this makes it even more important that we do what we can locally to protect residents and make sure no one has to choose between heating and eating. This requires us to show leadership and to persist with a bold and ambitious approach. And however dire the national situation and the knock-on effect this has to our local funding situation, we'll always set out a vision and we'll always continue to make the political case for change. So finally, thank you to officers for all their work on this, both in drawing this strategy up and all the actions that are taken year round to make it a reality. And the recommendation on page 75 is that we approve this strategy and action plan, so I hope we can do that today.
Thank you very much, Emma. Very, very well presented report. Any questions from Cabinet colleagues? Mike?
No, I don't have a question. I just want to really welcome this. I mean, it's really, really timely. It's one of the biggest challenges facing people at the moment, and I think the report sets out what a fantastic track record we've had over many years in developing affordable warmth and making it more affordable for people in the city. And I just think I'm really impressed by the range and the diversity, the breadth and depth of all the initiatives that are included in here. I think I knew about most of them, but I've not really ever before actually looked at it in the round and seen how much it is that we're doing. So I'm really, really pleased to see this come. Going to get my full support.
Well, if government needs some ideas, they have an exemplar in Norwich. Gail.
Yeah, thank you, Emma. That was really well presented, and as Mike is saying, there's some really good stuff going on. And I'd just like to say how good our officers are at sourcing and making bids. We shouldn't have to. We should be having properly funded local government. But until that day comes, thank you to the officers for all the work they do.
Thank you, Gail. Any other comments at all from anybody? Cabinet side, yes. Before I come on to Lucy. Lucy.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hampton. Thank you to the officers for a really thorough and informative report and welcoming the retitling to sustainable, although really it's just another word for affordable in terms of our shared world. The aim to eradicate fuel poverty by the twin track approach of increasing income and improving energy efficiency, which is at the heart of the report. So thank you for that. Just wanted to make the point really that recent data shows that 46% of fuel poor households are not receiving qualifying benefits, so they're in fuel poverty even though they're not low income. And with regards to energy efficiency, households are entering fuel poverty even though they occupy homes with good energy performance. So the landscape shifted. For those already in poverty, the crisis is exponentially worse. We've never been in a situation as bad as this. So everyone is affected adversely, and health, as the report says, health, death, accidents, social inclusion, dilapidation, and it's affecting everyone. Nelson Ward is comparatively well off. It's the ward I represent, and it's the worst of all in the city, according to the report. So it clearly shows that there needs to be joining up in the council and attracting investment, as we say, because we're not going to get it funded properly by government. We need to attract investment into retrofitting of all tenures, and it's essential. So could you confirm that funding will be available for a retrofit coordinator post over 2 years?
I think I would take issue with you about coordinating across the council, and I'm going to ask Phil if you'd just like to come in to talk about the affordable water strategy.
There's an appended action plan with the strategy which demonstrates our cross-directorate approach to collaboration with number of teams. So I think we pretty successfully work across the council.
So the point about coordination is covered. And I think that's a point we've made before, actually. Okay. Did that answer your question?
So that wasn't so much the question. It showed. I said the report shows that, so it evidences that. The question was asking about funding for a retrofit coordinator post in the council over more than 1 year.
Okay, but I think what we have evidence of, and Emma raised it, is the success that the council has in bidding. Councillor Harris made the same point. Bidding for the funding that is available in this area. I've never been convinced about a single person having that sort of responsibility, but I think has been very successful across a whole range of council activities, is the coordination of different departments and different service areas in pulling together the right kinds of bids to be able to draw those resources in. So I admire the, well, I respect the aspiration, but I think that has been demonstrated as having been delivered in the way that we've been successful in getting bids and resources in across a number of areas, including this one. Anything else to add? And we are, of course, working with other organisations in this field, as you know. Right, okay. Recommendations? Happy with that? I'm sure we want to approve the Sustainable Warmth Strategy and Action Plan, as indicate. Thank you very much. Okay, so that concludes our business for this evening. Thank you very much for your attention.